Work from home. It's a new year. Time for a new career in IT. At My Computer Career, you could start your career in months, not years. Attend day or night, on campus or live online. And
in here, let me see if we've got audio. So I think I may have forgotten to switch the audio, so I want to make sure we're actually streaming it. All right. So in the past, when I made this mistake, Facebook would bump the stream after a minute. So I want to make sure that everybody can hear it. So once you're connected, if you could throw a comment up, just letting me know that you can hear me okay, that'd be appreciated, and then I can go ahead and continue and get into the entirety of the After Schrock. All righty. Can you hear me, Mitch? All right. So what do you guys want to talk about first today? We got there's plenty to talk about, that's for sure. There's a lot going on in the world. A lot of it relates back to technology pretty directly, actually. One of the biggest things that kind of came up during the show was the timing of this move in Ukraine, and it's weird the things that we're getting reported on here in the U.S. and the things that are happening that we're not hearing about. For example, did you know that there were peace negotiations happening, trying to broker some kind of peace situation at the last minute between the Ukraine and Russia? And these negotiations are, thank you guys, appreciate the audio check. They're going forward, and that might be part of why the Ukraine is, hey, calm talked about war down. The other side is, it's literally when the medicine is worse than the disease, everybody's freaking out about war, and on Instagram, you've got moms picking up guns saying, I'm going to defend my country. I'm a Ukrainian mother, and I'm going to defend my country. That's a little panic-inducing, right? Because you know that they're all going to die if they raise guns against Russia, because Russia's military is going to be better. So, yeah, that's kind of concerning, right? So, yeah, the currency's imploding, and, the exports is $81 billion of exports, mostly to Russia from the Ukraine. Germany gets a lot from the Ukraine. Computers are the number 5 export from the Ukraine. Why is that? They have a lot of mining and production capability for the manufacturing of silicon. And so basically that's what all microprocessors are based on. So that's most of that's going to China, most of that's going to Russia, some of it's going to Germany and Poland, but not much. So we got that going on in Russia. Let's put that in a basket on one side. Now let's look and say, where are all the processors made? They're made in Taiwan. What happens if China decides that they were going to take Taiwan by force? So regardless of what it would take to get to that point, mathematically, they've war gamed the 6 ways from Sunday, and mathematically there's literally nothing that can be done to stop it from happening. China just has the raw numbers, and the numbers at such, 10 to 1, 50 to 1. It's just numbers. And they will eventually take the island. There's just nothing short of an all-out war, which the U.S. is not probably willing to do. There's nothing that we can do to help Taiwan defend themselves, or to expect Taiwan to repel an invasion attempt, even by sea. There's just no way to blow up that many boats in time before they get to the shore. It's ridiculous. So one of the things that is suspected to be a standing order in Taiwan is, should the Chinese take the island, they're going to destroy the manufacturing plants, the Samsung plants, the TSMC plants that make the 7, 6, 7, 8 nanometer, 10 nanometer chips, so that China does not get the capability to make those chips, because they can't get that capability right now. They're having difficulty doing it. And if they got a manufacturing base that already had that capability in Taiwan, they instantly would be catapulted generations ahead in military technology. What a lot of people don't realize is that microchips make the military now. So you want a missile to guide itself, it needs a microchip. Is your microchip faster than somebody else's microchip? Then your missile intercept system can intercept the missile and can change directions faster than the other missile can. So microchips, the silicon war is real. And in the event that something like that would happen in Taiwan, that would dramatically impact the production of microprocessors on a worldwide basis. That's one of the reasons why you're seeing chip plants coming up in Ohio and Arizona. These chip plants aren't going to be online for the next 4 years, but they're starting now. because they want to bring some of this back home again because it's a national security risk. We have to have the capability to produce our own chips, at least for defense, should the need arise. So it's widely expected that Russia is probably not going to do something to irk China, so they're not going to invade the Ukraine before the Olympics, right? So let's game out a theory where the Olympics are, what, a week and a half away? At the conclusion of the Olympics, mid-February, Russia and Ukraine get hot and heavy. We have war in Europe. And the U.S. is committed to stopping that, so we take whatever actions we're going to take, 8,000 troops, whatever we're going to do. Maybe we cut Russia off from the SWIFT banking system. Maybe all these things happen. And then wouldn't that be, if there was an ideal time for China to move on Taiwan, with that level of distraction happening in the world, wouldn't that be a good time to do it? Not saying they would, because Russia's taken Crimea, they took Georgia, and China never invaded Taiwan those times. So maybe it's a whole lot of nothing. But should something like that happen, the destabilization would be dramatically intense. So I mean that's something that keeps me up at night a little bit, thinking about that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh boy, this would be bad if we only have another couple more years of tranquility, so we can get these plants online here. That would be immensely helpful, because we are so reliant on Asia for processors. You guys have no idea. Literally, if something like that were to happen, there would be no new computers. There literally would not be new computers. We would be using what we have, or making it work, or finding old tech to make old tech work. It's scary as all get out. Where does a company like Schrock get parts? Where does that leave Schrock Innovations if we can't build computers? If we can't get parts? If we can't fix your computer because your motherboard failed and we can't get new motherboards? We can't get used motherboards. We can't get any motherboards. Well, I have a warranty. The parts don't exist. We can't do anything about it. So, I mean, we don't want to get into that. And you can only stockpile so much stuff. Eventually, all stockpiles run out, right? So we try to figure out what we're going to do to keep things running and keep things operating, and, what we should have on hand and how we can procure it and where we can get supplies that maybe other people aren't considering. And that's what's been able to allow us to keep our prices where they're at, as opposed to like HP and Dell and everybody else that have just... we've been able to keep our prices relatively stable. So it's been kind of neat along that regard. Also in the news this week, we've got a story on Joe Biden wanting to throw an executive order to regulate cryptocurrency. Ironically, I believe that this story is also related to Ukraine, because one of the big punishments that the U.S. is considering throwing at Russia, we considered it when they took Georgia, but we didn't do it, is kicking Russia out of the SWIFT banking system. That would mean that Russian banks would not be able to send or receive money internationally, or even domestically. Only 20% of their domestic financial transfers are handled by their own system that they built as a stopgap, so at least their internal country would work if they got kicked out of SWIFT. We did this to Iran, and it literally destroyed their economy. It would have a similar impact on Russia. It would get mitigated. Russia would trade with China a little bit. But one of the things you have to realize is Russians are smart people. They are smart. They're the kind of smart that you get when you're living through adversity. So let me give you an example. In the 1980s, we were getting computers, right? Russia couldn't import computers from the United States because there was the Cold War, right? Iron Curtain, all that stuff. We weren't going to send them computers. You gotta be kidding me, right? So Russians went out and bought the individual parts, the transistors, the resistors, the 8-bit chips, and they built their own computers. They built their own keyboards. Could you imagine building a keyboard? Just think about that for a second. You need to carve the keys out of wood? Yeah, it's going to be a wooden keyboard. They made wooden keyboards because they couldn't buy keyboards. I mean, that level of adversity is why when you talk about all the cyber stuff, why can't we ever catch up with them? They're always thinking outside the box. How can I make this work? How can I jimmy rig this? That's why they always have battle robots with arm-mounted laser cannons or something, and they're like, oh, look at Putin's demoing this. It's not battle ready. It's hacked together from a bunch of different systems that aren't going to work well together if put into practice in the field. But it sure makes for a good photo op, doesn't it? So that's what you're dealing with there. So you cut them out of the SWIFT network, and they're going to say, what other method can we use to move money internationally that the United States can't sanction or stop? Well, you can't send boats of gold, because boats of gold can be intercepted. Trucks of gold can be intercepted. What could you send? Crypto. Yeah, you can do it with Bitcoin. No one can stop it. It's instantaneous. It's verifiable. Lots of people with mining equipment in Kazakhstan. A lot of mining happening in Russia right now. So, yeah, we can use Bitcoin. So the Biden administration comes out with an executive order. They want to regulate cryptocurrencies and stablecoins. They want to start talking about regulating them. They want to. The executive order is going to instruct government agencies to start investigating. Okay, because we can't have this scenario where Russia is able to freely transact business outside of the control of the United States of America. That can't happen. And in that lies the entire problem with the system. Having the SWIFT system in place only works if everybody uses it. If people choose to not use it, it loses its power. If you choose to use it as a weapon to sanction or ban over and over and over and over and over again the same people, eventually they're just going to stop using it. And when they do stop using it, you can't kick them out, because kicking them out would make them stop using it, and that breaks the system. Because lots of businesses transact with Russia for very legitimate reasons. If Russia takes the Ukraine, we bought my son a Christmas present from the Ukraine this year. It was really cool. It was like a Hot Wheels garage thing that you had to put together. It was made out of wood, but you put it together, and it's like 100 little parking spots for cars all over the place. It was really cool. It's some Ukrainian dude, very well reviewed on Instagram, just making a living. They're good people in the Ukraine, right? Well, then if they become part of Russia, do they get cut off from the SWIFT system too? And now they can't have any banking? That dude can't sell his products on Instagram anymore because he can't take payment? That's what we're talking about. He can't take payment. There's no transaction. So you'd have to sell online and ask for payment in cryptocurrency. And that is something that scares the pants off of the establishment, because it removes power. It allows a secondary system that can't be allowed to happen. So now the government is going to jump in and say, okay, we gotta figure out this Bitcoin thing, and then we have to figure out the stablecoin thing, which is tied to Bitcoin. Stablecoins exist because Bitcoin exists, and Bitcoin is reliant in large part on stablecoins, because it's almost impossible to move your money easily from dollars to bitcoins back to dollars to bitcoins. So you have these stable coins that you move in and out of, and the stable coin, for every stable coin that's out there, there's $1 in a bank account somewhere. So it's worth $1. So it's like moving into dollars without actually moving into dollars. Similar. So all these stable coins exist, and they're all competitors for the US dollar, basically. And the US wants to release their own central bank digital currency eventually, and that would compete with all the existing stable coins, because then they'd all be stable coins, right? There wouldn't be dollars anymore. It'd all be digital. That's where eventually it's going, unfortunately. Eventually. Has been for some time. So, number one, Biden's executive order is going to be a yawn fest for crypto. There might be a little bit of a blip where you might be able to sell and then buy it a little bit of a dip, and then it'll be back up in a week. Because this is an executive order asking federal agencies to start looking into things. Nothing is going to happen from this executive order specifically. Number two, you can't outlaw Bitcoin. China, how many times has China outlawed Bitcoin? And if China can't outlaw Bitcoin, they can't stop their people from using it or holding it, who can? Okay. So number 3, there are all kinds of other industries that every single day that goes by are getting tied into Bitcoin. I saw this funny tweet, and it was like the history of Bitcoin from a regulatory standpoint. It said 2010, Bitcoin is stupid. 2012, only cyber freaks use it. 2014, only nerds use it. 2017, only small firms use it. 2020, now it's in everyone's portfolio, right? Now it's a national security risk. 2020, national security risk. So it goes in 10 years from being nothing to a national security risk all of a sudden. It's a national security risk because it removes a very powerful tool from the toolbox. You don't want kinetic war with Russia. The only other thing you can do is financial war or Cold War. So financial war it is, but now we can't do that because of cryptocurrency. Yeah, darn it. How do we handle that? But now you see, the longer they wait to do this, you've got a country like El Salvador who's going to be actually trading bonds denominated in Bitcoin. You hear that everyone is allowing you to use NFTs in your profiles now and in your video games. That's why Microsoft bought Activision. NFTs. The only way NFTs exist is if Ethereum exists. And Ethereum is a cryptocurrency. Do you see where I'm going with this? Like, it's becoming so interwoven into our culture now. Even though you may not use cryptocurrency right now, maybe you don't have any, or you've never transacted any, you've never sent any or received any. It's there, and other people are doing it. And eventually you might too. PayPal's going to integrate it into their regular wallet, so is Square. Banks are going to get in on this. I mean, it's going to permeate the U.S. economy. And the U.S. government is moving too slow. So now, what are their options? We outlaw cryptocurrency. We just say it's against the law. And every firm has to sell all their crypto. Tesla's got to sell it all. I mean, they'll lose half the value of their company. Crypto prices will crash because everyone is selling. Think like when you sold the price of gold when everyone was selling because they had to. The price of crypto will crash because everyone is selling it. Smart people will buy it knowing that the ban can't last forever. I will buy it, even if it's in a wallet that nobody knows about. How will I buy it? With other crypto, stablecoin. See how this works? You can't outlaw it. You can't stop it. You can't block it. It's like trying to stop people from thinking. You might be able to influence how they think, but you can't stop them from thinking at all. And eventually that's going to be where things end up. So there's a lot of really, really major stuff floating around right now out there in the news cycle, and it's overwhelming sometimes, to be brutally honest. All right, let's check and see what we got for comments here. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to start liking these comments here. Good morning, Greg. Mitch, good to have you back. There's Winston. Thank you for the audio check, guys. Appreciate it again. Mary. Roger and Karen. Alrighty. Oh no, a spammer? We have a spammer? Somebody maybe already removed it, I don't know. The U.S. should boycott the Olympics. You could, I guess, but what is that going to do? Jimmy Carter did it. It'll make the comparison better, Let's see. The program about Bitcoin indicated Russia is very interested in crypto, meaning to destabilize the dollar. Well, that's the thing, Randy. If the dollar is a better currency, it'll win. And one of the things that this is a tough one to say. Remind me to tell you about the article that I read that made me wonder if we were actually the good guys. So that was a tough read. But if the dollar is a stronger currency, is a better currency, is a more widely adopted currency, is a more trusted currency, it has nothing to worry about. At what point in America did we become an opponent of something that was better? So is Bitcoin a currency? Is it a better currency? That's still up in the air. I think it's got some definite advantages, especially in parts of the world that don't have the dollar or don't use the dollar or have inflation concerns, like South America, like Africa. I think it's got some capabilities that are going to force banks and other things. Why is it the stock market only doesn't run 24/7? Companies run 24/7. Why is it that banks don't work on the weekend? Why can't you send a wire transfer on the weekend? Why does business stop on Friday? We have technology to automate all this now. There's no reason for it to stop. It's not like you need a human there to push the yes button. And that's the kind of stuff. Bitcoin is going to give us efficiencies, and it's going to force existing institutions to become more efficient. So I'm not 100% like Bitcoin is the future here and the dollar is doomed, but I think it's going to force the dollar to be more competitive, and that's only going to be a good thing, I think. Story about the thing. Okay, so there was a story that came out, and apparently it's been out for a while, but it got buried. I'll let you decide why it got buried. But and forgive me, I don't have it up in front of me. I wasn't planning on talking about this at the moment. But when we were involved in the Syria thing, remember ISIS was in Syria, Russia was in Syria, Syria was in Syria, Assad. Russia and Assad were beating up on ISIS, and they were pushing ISIS back. Did it ever occur to you, why is it that at times we seem to be supporting ISIS, and at times we were opposing ISIS, and then they're putting Christians in cages and doing horrible things, and but then somehow they get support. They're getting support from somebody who's supporting them. The enemy of my enemy kind of stuff. So in Syria, ISIS was fighting Assad, and we wanted Assad deposed. So Russia was trying to prop him up, and we were trying to make sure that he got deposed. The active force in the field was ISIS. I'll let you do the math. So ISIS was getting their butts kicked. They were getting pushed back. You ever wonder why Trump was able to roll them up so quick when he became president? Anyway, so they're getting their rear ends handed to them, getting pushed back. And there's this giant dam that's holding back like 17-mile wide reservoir of water. Downstream from the dam are tens of thousands of Syrian civilians. Okay? The dam is on a no-strike list, for a U.S. no-strike list, because you strike the dam, you could kill tens of thousands of civilians. ISIS is retreating. Assad's army is advancing. They're going to win. They need something else to worry about. The United States bombed the dam. How do we know the United States bombed the dam? Because 5 stories down in the concrete structure of the dam was the dud bunker buster bomb that didn't blow up. U.S. ordnance. We tried to blow up a dam that would have resulted in the death of tens of thousands of civilians to give ISIS retreat cover. You read a story like that, and you got as a human being, you just have to say, what monster thought that was a good idea? There's lines, guys. There are lines. That's very, very definitely over the line. So, yeah, the New York Times reportedly had the story but buried it at the request of somebody. I don't know. Generals at the time when they were asked about it came out and said that it was fake news, whatever. It was lies. It was completely true. So anyway, we find out these things after the fact. So boycotting the Olympics, I don't think that's going to do anything to anybody. Cryptocurrency, if the dollar is stronger, the dollar will win. And if you're concerned that the dollar is not strong, U.S. government, make the dollar strong. Let's do it. Yes, it's going to make exports more difficult. Well, we shouldn't be importing as much as we're importing. So let's make the stuff here and use it here. We're a consumer economy. Why don't we supply our own consumers? That's what China's trying to do right now. They're trying to go from a supplier economy to a consumption economy where they supply the consumption to their own economy. Imagine that. Oh boy. Currently stockpiling toilet paper? Well, you'll be set, Aaron. All righty, let's see here. Is Russia still helping the International Space Station getting supplies to them? What happened to the ISS? SpaceX is delivering to the International Space Station now, so we don't necessarily need Russia, but the ISS is falling apart, so we kind of need a new ISS. Meanwhile, China built one for themselves. What is an example of a stablecoin? Stablecoin would be like USDT is the pair name, Tether. USDC is another one. There's a lot of different stablecoins out there, but those are the two big ones: USDC, USDT. Those two coins trade dollar to dollar. They might fluctuate a couple hundredths of a penny on a given day, but for the most part, they hold their value as a dollar. So if you think Bitcoin is going to go down, you sell your Bitcoin for Tether or for USDC, and then you sit in the stable coin, which is basically like a dollar. Bitcoin drops down, then you move back into Bitcoin again, buying more Bitcoin for the same amount of money, and therefore increasing your Bitcoin stack. So that's what a stable coin is. Big problem is Iran. Russia goes into Ukraine. China goes into Taiwan. Iran sees their chance to hit Israel. Israel fights back and uses tactical nukes. Who will help Israel? Yeah. Yeah, it's looking an awful World War I-y like world, isn't it? All right. Same monsters that left $86 billion of equipment. Yeah. I don't know. I guess I don't want to end up on a list somewhere, so I'll be careful what I say, right? Which is kind of just scary in itself. Speaking of which, I heard a news report on the way in this morning that the Capitol Hill Police are Nancy Pelosi is in charge of the Capitol Hill Police. They're tasked with protecting lawmakers. So they are currently monitoring who every lawmaker meets with and doing background checks on those people and their spouses and their families to ensure that they're not a threat to the lawmakers. And this background check is going beyond what is happening in Washington, D.C. Like if you went to Washington to go meet with your House of Representative member or your senator, then they would do a background check on you and your family to make sure you're not some wackadoo. Get that, okay? But this is actually going down to when the candidates come back to their district and they have events. People who attend the events are being vetted and their families are being vetted. Donors to their campaigns are being vetted as well. In fact, a number of Republican candidates are reporting that their top donors have all been audited by the IRS in the last 2 years. Funny thing is that the Democrats don't have the same problem. And on top of that, this report that I heard this morning on the radio on the way in was from a guy from Capitol Hill, from a former legislator, who said it would be different if, like, they were doing these background checks and then they would pull me aside as the protected person and say, "Hey, you're about to meet with somebody. They're not on the level. They're not legit. You really need to watch out." What if the Capitol Police would have been there to stop Eric Swalwell from having a relationship with that Chinese spy chick that he had a relationship with for all that time? Where was the vetting there? Where was the pulling him aside and saying, "Hey, Eric, this lady is not who she appears to be. She's a Chinese spy. You don't want to get involved with her." So this Republican says they're not doing that. They're not coming to us and saying, "Hey, this person is a threat. You need to watch out." In fact, we don't get any of the data at all. In fact, we don't know where the data goes, and because of something, I don't know why, it's a non-FOIable agency, which means it's not subject to Freedom of Information Act. So literally, there is what this person was suggesting was that the Capitol Police are acting as a political opposition research gathering arm of the Democratic National Committee, piping information to Democrats about Republicans, who they're meeting with, who their donors are, what they're saying, so that Democrats can use that information for campaign purposes. I don't know if that's completely true or not. It was on national news program. I can't tell you. I didn't vet the sources myself. But with all that said, given everything else we've seen the government do, is it so radically improbable? Like I said, we're running out of conspiracy theories. We need to make some new ones, right? Alrighty. Yeah, boycotting the Olympic Games would cause a lot of companies to pull out. It would also hurt a lot of companies. You know, NBC is not going to get their $1 billion fee back that they've already paid to China to cover the Olympics, for example. Yeah, so I guess I'm not a big fan of optics, of doing things for the way that they look exclusively. It's important to have, and I mean, that was one of the big problems Trump had was optics, right? He was doing a lot of the right things, but he just did them so bellicosely that people were just like, yeah, you know. If he could have just been more Reagan-esque, you know, maybe he'd have done a little better. But then again, yeah, that's not who he was. You know, that's not who he is as a person. But anyway, I guess I don't want to get too deep into the politics here, but you know, you read stories like that, it really makes you stop and think, right? And you stop and think. If you stop and think for a second and you're willing to consider the possibilities that not every news story that talks about us doing something means we're the good guy. And it's possible we're the cleanest shirt in a dirty hamper. I mean, that there's not. This isn't the Wild West where you have a white hat and a black hat and lines are clearly delineated here. Is Assad worse than ISIS? Is ISIS worse than Assad? Is Russia worse than either one of them? You know, how many tens of thousands of people will be killed if Assad, you know, held power, for example. These are the kind of morbid games that, you know, bureaucrats and politicians have to consider that maybe I can sit here as an armchair quarterback and not consider. So there is that. But I just don't see how blowing up a dam and potentially killing, if that bomb would have gone off, tens of thousands of Syrians would be dead. The only reason they're not dead is because of American manufacturing incompetence. We could look at it that way too. Maybe if we would have made the bomb in China, they would have gone off. I don't know. Alrighty. Is Coinbase safe from having your Bitcoin stolen? Coinbase is one of the safest. They're also insured. Not FDIC insured, but they do have insurance because they're a custodial company. They know how to do it right. So if you were going to leave Bitcoin somewhere, Coinbase is a safe place to leave it. All right, guys. Last call for questions. We're going to have to wrap it up here in just a couple. Let's see. Yeah, and see, Aaron's saying, you know, talking about Fauci having his tentacles in China working on COVID. You know, looking back, you know, retroactively, we can certainly now say, well, this is really a bad idea. There was a reason that gain-of-function research is not allowed in the United States. This is the reason. It's dangerous. One mistake, and statistically, you're going to make a mistake at some point. But one mistake. So by outlawing it here, we've forced it off into other countries like China, where the U.S. funding found the path of least resistance, went to China where the research could be done, and got it done. Now, of course, all that's up for debate. It's not settled science or anything like that. But long story short, is Fauci a villain? Is he an evil dude? I mean, he's killed a lot of beagles, right? There is the African AIDS thing, where he said that you can get AIDS by having close contact with family members. Okay, you can get AIDS from each other, which is obviously not true now that we know more about it. But maybe the science evolved. I don't know. That was very young Fauci. He looked really like a nerd when he was young, like really much like a nerd. Like, wow. Anyway, so I don't know. I guess I am not trying to bend anyone's will one way or the other here. I'm just telling you what my gut reaction was when I read that story about Syria. And, you know, it's like, do I have a particular love or affiliation for the Syrian people or an affiliation to a particular pipeline or anything? No, I don't. I do understand that the world is nuanced. I'm not a noob. I understand that, or a rube or whatever. I get that sometimes you have to do unsavory things, especially in war. But wow, I would sure like to hear the use case that was done to justify that bombing. Because something tells me it's going to be really, really hard to defend. Alrighty. Thanks for joining us, guys. I appreciate you being a part of the After Schrock. We did have one of our episodes removed from YouTube. It was October 21st, I think, got pulled. It is available on Rumble. I don't know what we said that day because it was October of last year, and I don't remember. But it is on Rumble if you want to go back and look. But yeah, it got yoinked from YouTube for violating community standards. So hopefully we did a better job today of not violating any community standards. We want to be a good, upstanding member of our community and not kill tens of thousands of people or anything like that. So if you had a problem with the podcast today, let me know. If you enjoyed it, let me know. But definitely if you didn't enjoy it, let me know. Let me know what I can do better. I'm always trying to improve. I'm always trying to get better so that I'm delivering you guys content that you enjoy. And that's informative too. So it's a constant evolution effort trying to get better over here, both on the radio show and the After Schrock. We'll see you all again next weekend. Have a great week. Be safe. Have fun. And we'll see you in the service centers. Don't forget to check out those core upgrades while we can still get chips for them. If it's something you're thinking about doing, I would recommend you move quicker rather than slower on that one.